Welcome to the Geostrategic Podcast.
I want to start off by saluting everyone joining us today, and a massive thank you for watching or listening to the podcast. China's J-10C just changed air warfare forever, and almost no one is talking about it. China is no longer sending fighters into battle alone. Instead, the J-10C is now part of a powerful network linked to early warning aircraft, ground radars, and air defense systems in real time. This isn't just an upgrade, it's a completely new way of fighting wars in the sky. So what does this mean for the future of air combat, and who should be worried? Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and share to support the channel. And I really want to hear your take. Is this the future of air warfare? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one of them. Let's get started.
Yeah, to really set the framework for this deep dive, based on the latest updates coming out of the region, we're witnessing a pretty rapid, deliberate shift in their military doctrine.
Right.
They are, moving aggressively away from that traditional idea of localized lone wolf fighter jets.
The whole classic Top Gun style of flying, right?
Exactly, yeah. What's replacing it is this highly integrated system of systems combat network. And the timing here is actually not a coincidence at all.
Because of the anniversary.
Right. This operational shift is being heavily showcased right around the 28th anniversary of the J-10's inaugural flight. It's a very specific marker of their modernization trajectory.
It's crazy to think about. I mean, an airframe that started out as this basic short-range interceptor nearly 3 decades ago is now, well, it's acting as a fused sensor node in a digital web.
It really is. And to understand the geostrategic impact, we first have to understand how the tactics in the sky have physically changed.
Right, the actual application of the hardware?
Yeah, because the airframe itself is familiar, but the application is entirely different. The J-10C is no longer operating as a single siloed combat platform.
So it's not just flying up, painting the sky with its own radar and engaging?
No, not anymore. The latest news shows it operating strictly in tandem with assets like the KJ-500 early warning aircraft.
Okay, so break that down for us. Why is the KJ-500 so important here?
Well, it's all about sensor disparity. The J-10C has a great radar, but it's limited by its size and the curvature of the Earth. But the KJ-500, it flies at these really high altitudes. And it doesn't just have a normal spinning radar dish.
He has the fixed arrays, right?
Exactly. 3 fixed arrays that give it continuous 360-degree coverage. It can detect enemies from hundreds of kilometers away, and then it feeds that data directly to the J-10C via a secure, continuous data link.
So if I'm trying to visualize this, it's basically like playing a multiplayer video game where your teammate has a map hack that reveals all the enemy positions on your screen.
That's actually a pretty intuitive way to think about it.
Because, the J-10C can just keep its own radar completely off to stay hidden and maneuver into a blind spot and only blast its radar at the very last second to guide a missile.
Exactly. And that drastically reduces the jet's chances of being detected early. I mean, in reality, the electromagnetic spectrum is a physical battle space. If a fighter jet turns on its own radar, it's emitting massive amounts of radio frequency energy.
Basically screaming its exact location to everyone in the theater.
Right. So by relying on the KJ-500 sensors, the J-10C flies what we call an MCON, or Emissions Control Silent Profile. It performs bypass maneuvers without emitting any radio waves at all.
Okay, but I'm stuck on one thing here.
Sure, what is it?
If the J-10C is staying quiet to survive, but the KJ-500 is sitting up there at 30,000 feet blasting a massive radar signal to see everything, isn't the KJ-500 just painting a giant target on its own back? I mean, modern missiles are designed to home in on that.
That is the fundamental vulnerability of any active sensor, yeah. But that's exactly why this networked approach, this system of systems, is so critical.
How so?
Well, the KJ-500 isn't flying on the front lines. Because its radar is so powerful, it can maintain a massive standoff distance, staying hundreds of kilometers deep inside friendly, highly defended airspace.
Ah, so it stays way back in safe territory.
Exactly. It acts like the quarterback, sitting safely in the pocket, while the J-10C is the wide receiver operating deep out in contested territory.
Got it. And to get to the quarterback, an adversary has to fight through a whole defensive line of J-10Cs.
Right, and long-range surface-to-air missiles. Which actually brings us to the next major development from the latest updates, because this network doesn't just exist up in the clouds.
Yeah, it's physically anchored to the ground.
Precisely. We were talking about a highly sophisticated air-ground data sharing loop. Airborne radars, even the advanced ones on the KJ-500, have limitations when looking down.
Like if an enemy jet is flying low through a mountain range, you get terrain masking.
Exactly. The radar energy bounces off the mountains and the Earth, which creates ground clutter. But ground-based early warning radars provide a completely different viewing angle.
Because they look up into the sky.
Right, against the clean backdrop of space, making it much harder for an adversary to hide. And the latest drills integrate these ground radars directly into the J-10C's cockpit displays.
And from what I understand from the latest info, this data flow is completely bidirectional now.
It is, yeah.
So if a J-10C is flying silently and spots a threat, it doesn't even have to fire its own weapons. It can instantly package that targeting data and transmit it down to a ground-based air defense missile battery.
Like an HQ-9, yeah.
Right, and then the ground unit can fire a missile at a target its own radars can't even see yet.
That concept is known as cooperative engagement capability.
Yeah.
And achieving it is incredibly difficult from a software standpoint. You're taking a track generated by a jet, moving at Mach 1.5, stabilizing it, and translating it into a firing solution for a ground missile in real time.
Wait, if the jet is just passing targeting data to a ground battery so the battery can take the shot, does this mean the traditional role of the fighter pilot is fading? Is the J-10C pilot essentially just acting as a forward scout for missile launchers to avoid duplicating tasks?
It's a really valid question, but I wouldn't say the role is fading at all. It's just mutated. The cognitive demands on the pilot are actually much higher now.
Higher? How so?
Because you have to consider what happens when this pristine theoretical network is suddenly plunged into chaos. The recent high-intensity training focused heavily on operating in complex electromagnetic environments.
Which is military shorthand for getting jammed heavily by the enemy,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
They are explicitly training for scenarios where high-tech adversaries are actively using severe electronic warfare. We're talking about barrage jamming and targeted attacks on the data links themselves.
So it's all about network durability. But if an adversary is pumping white noise into the spectrum, how does the J-10C still talk to the network?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question in aerospace engineering. The network relies on highly directional data beams and rapid frequency hopping to survive.
Okay, but from the pilot's perspective.
Right. Well, they aren't just managing the stick and throttle anymore. They are actively managing the health of their digital connections. If that data feed from the KJ500 drops, the pilot has to instantly transition from being a passive sensor node back into an active lone wolf hunter.
Oh, wow. So they have to constantly swap between offensive and defensive network roles on the fly.
Yeah, it's about full spectrum readiness, which brings us to the geostrategic implications of all this.
Because if you are monitoring global security, the takeaway here is that individual hardware, the jet itself, matters significantly less than the software integration.
Absolutely. This operational shift fundamentally alters the balance of regional air power. By layering these sensors, command nodes, and attack systems across both domains, China is engineering a defensive shield.
And that anti-accessoria denial bubble is geometrically harder to penetrate.
Very. In fact, Chinese military expert Zhang Junshi noted in recent updates that this specific system of systems approach allows for simultaneous offensive and defensive operations.
Right, meaning they aren't just defending airspace. They can project a strike package outward while maintaining that impenetrable shield at home.
Exactly. And this level of integration also signals a definitive move toward total military self-reliance.
Meaning they aren't relying on imported technology like they used to.
Right. Decades ago, they were highly dependent on imported Russian avionics and external engine technology.
Like the early J-10s flying with Russian engines.
Exactly. But today, they're executing these multi-element operations entirely using indigenous technology. Domestic engines, domestic processors, domestic software.
That is a massive paradigm shift. They've proven they can sustain this modernization without external tech. We are looking at a jet that took its first flight 28 years ago as a single platform, now acting as just one redundant node in a massive, jam-resistant digital kill web.
It completely redefines what we consider lethal in modern air combat. The performance of the individual aircraft is secondary to the durability of the network it plugs into.
Because if you have the stealthiest fighter in the world, but its data links are severed and its sensors are blinded, it's fundamentally useless against a networked adversary.
That is the new standard for regional airspace defense.
Which leaves you, our listener, with a critical and honestly somewhat unsettling question to consider as we wrap up this deep dive. If modern combat success now depends entirely on the durability of the network rather than the kinetic performance of a single aircraft, does the ultimate target in future wars stop being the fighter jet itself?
That is the real question to ask.
If you are planning an air campaign tomorrow, Do you even bother shooting at the J-10C, or do you dedicate all your resources to hunting the data link? Who wins when the network itself is the weapon?
It's a completely new era of warfare.
It really is. Well, thank you all so much for watching or listening to this deep dive. If you enjoyed this conversation, I highly invite you to check out and listen to our other podcasts. See you next time.
Thanks for joining us.